Have you ever watched your own child turn against you, standing in front of your house on Christmas Eve, your life crumbling while the snow falls quietly around you? I remember that night like it was yesterday. My name is Margaret, and for over 40 years, I had built Celebrate Life, a small but thriving event planning business. From nothing, every ribbon, every balloon, every meticulously planned party carried a piece of me. My son, Daniel, had grown up beside the stacks of contracts and the glittering confetti I brought home each night. He had always loved to watch, sometimes helping, sometimes simply marveling at the world I had built with my own hands. But then Jessica came into our lives. She was charming, elegant, and worked at the bank where Daniel kept the company accounts. She whispered ideas, planted seeds in Daniel's mind about control, ownership, and ambition I didn't notice at first. I thought, she loves my son, she must care for him. But that love was never for him. It was for my life's work, the home I built, the money I had saved after decades of sweat and struggle. That Christmas Eve, I had prepared a small family dinner, as I did every year. The fire crackled in the fireplace, music hummed softly in the background, and the scent of roasted turkey filled the house. I had wrapped gifts for my grandchildren, Emily and Noah, and even a few surprises for Daniel, hoping to remind him of the warmth of family. But the moment we sat down, the air shifted. Jessica was sharp, Daniel was tense, and the children sensed the tension immediately. "Mom," Daniel said, voice strained, "we need to talk about Celebrate Life." "About the company?" I asked gently, trying to keep my smile in place. "Yes," he said, avoiding my gaze. "Jessica thinks, maybe it's time to transfer ownership." I felt my chest tighten. Transfer ownership? "Daniel, this is the company I built from the ground up. Your father and I worked our entire lives to create this." His hands trembled slightly, but he didn't meet my eyes. Jessica leaned forward, her smile sharp as a knife. "Margaret, it's just business. Daniel deserves control now. You're old-fashioned. You should step aside." "Old-fashioned?" I wanted to laugh, but instead my heart sank. I realized then that my son was no longer seeing me as his mother. He was seeing me as an obstacle. "Daniel, I won't sign anything tonight," I said firmly. "Not this Christmas Eve, not ever. You'll have to earn it, not demand it." He stared at me, eyes wide, a mixture of confusion and frustration. "Mom, this isn't fair." "Jessica is right. It's just business. Business built on decades of love, sweat, and sacrifices," I replied, voice rising. "You cannot take it from me with words alone." The room went silent. Emily clutched my hand, while Noah buried his face in his mother's skirt, and then, Daniel's patience snapped. He grabbed my arm. "Mom, just sign it." "It's over," he shouted. I pulled away, shocked, trembling. "Daniel, how can you?" Before I could finish, he shoved me toward the front door. The cold wind slammed into me as I stumbled. Emily screamed, "Dad, stop," while Noah clutched her arm. Jessica's mother appeared behind her, panicked. "Jessica, what's happening?" "Nothing, Mom. Margaret's leaving," Jessica said calmly, almost triumphantly. Daniel threw open the door. "Don't come back until you're ready to sign," he said, his voice cold. I froze, clutching my purse, the children's gifts still inside the house. "You selfish old woman." Jessica yelled, her voice cutting through the night. "Now you'll see what it feels like to be alone, to lose everything." And then the door slammed shut behind me. I stood on the icy sidewalk, shivering, humiliated, rejected, staring at the warm glow of my own home from the outside. Christmas lights twinkled, laughter echoed faintly from other houses, and I felt my world collapse around me. But beneath the shame and heartbreak, a tiny spark ignited. Anger. Resolve. I would not let them win. Have you ever spent Christmas Eve alone in a cheap hotel, surrounded by strangers' laughter and fireworks, while your heart breaks? I have. I wandered the streets for 20 minutes, dragging my suitcase, peering into windows where families celebrated. Every happy face stabbed at my chest, yet I knew something essential. I would fight back. I finally checked into a small, shabby hotel. The room was cramped, a thin blanket, a broken lamp, mildew in the bathroom, a curtain barely covering the window. I locked the door and sank to the floor, feeling the weight of decades of life pressing down on me. Tears came, harsh and unrelenting. I cried for my lost security, my betrayed trust, my children's innocence. I opened my phone and looked at old photos of Daniel, his first steps, school graduations, birthdays, and finally, his wedding to Jessica. What did I do wrong? I whispered, my fingers tracing his baby photo. I had given him everything, love, guidance, opportunity, even my life savings, and yet, here I was, discarded on the sidewalk like an unwanted relic. I washed my face, cold water stinging my skin, and stared into the cracked mirror. The reflection was of a weary woman, red eyes, tangled hair, deep lines of hardship etched into my face, but in those eyes, a spark remained. Willpower. Determination. A refusal to surrender. I picked up my phone again and called Mr. Thompson, my lawyer and longtime ally. His gravelly voice answered, Margaret, are you all right? It's Christmas Eve. I'm not, I said, voice trembling. Daniel threw me out. I need your help. 10 minutes later, he arrived, briefcase in hand, eyes sharp despite the late hour. I told him everything. The dinner, the office, the threats, the shove, the door slamming in my face. He listened, taking notes carefully, nodding occasionally. Coercion, attempted asset theft, elder abuse, he said finally. These are serious offenses. You could press charges. I don't want to sue my own son, I whispered, tears threatening again. Then what do you want? He asked. Justice. I want him to learn a lesson. I want my house back. My dignity, I said firmly. He leaned forward. Tomorrow morning, I'll file an emergency motion. You are the legal owner. He has no right to evict you. I nodded, heart pounding. The first step toward reclaiming my life was set that night, as fireworks exploded outside. I lay in that cold hotel bed, finally feeling a glimmer of hope. Justice would come, and Daniel would learn what it truly meant to betray the woman who had fought her entire life. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, a restless weight pressing on my chest. The hotel room was silent, save for the faint hum of the city waking outside. I dressed carefully, putting on the same navy blouse and gray skirt I had worn yesterday. Each movement was deliberate. I could feel my resolve solidifying with every breath. Mr. Thompson called at 7:30. Margaret, we have the court order, he said, his voice calm but firm. My house will be returned? I asked, hardly daring to hope. Yes, he confirmed. The judicial officers will be at the property by 2 p.m. They have reviewed the case carefully. A mother evicted on Christmas Eve is not a situation any court takes lightly. Relief washed over me, but it was tempered by the knowledge that I would soon face my son, my own blood. In this way, I ate a meager breakfast, a slice of toast and a cup of black coffee. The bitterness grounded me, gave me strength, and reminded me that I was not powerless. By 9, I was at the courthouse, documents clutched tightly in my hand. The clerk smiled politely, unaware of the storm about to erupt. I signed the last of the paperwork, and my lawyer handled the filing swiftly. The case was clear. Daniel had no legal standing to evict me, no right to access the company accounts, no power over my assets. I returned to the hotel briefly, sitting by the window, imagining the look on Daniel and Jessica's faces when the court officers arrived. It was an odd mix of anticipation and fear, knowing that I would see the immediate consequences of their actions. By 2 p.m., my phone rang. Margaret, the officers are on their way, Mr. Thompson said. Would you like to come along? He asked gently. I hesitated. Part of me longed to witness their faces, to feel the justice strike visibly, but another part wanted to remain unseen. No, I said firmly. Let justice handle it. Very well. Call me when it is done. I walked slowly to a nearby park, the winter sun casting long shadows on the empty streets. I sat on a bench, gripping my hands, my mind replaying every shove, every cruel word from the night before. And then, at 2:15, my phone rang again. It was Daniel. Mom, what have you done? His voice shook, panic thinly veiled beneath anger. I protected myself. Daniel, I said quietly. The officers are here. The house is mine. You have 48 hours to vacate. There was a long silence, punctuated only by his heavy breathing. Jessica's voice came through, shrill and frantic. Call the lawyer. Now. I'm sure you can read the documents yourself, I replied, firm and unflinching. But Mom, it's Christmas, Daniel whispered, desperation creeping in. And you threw me out on Christmas Eve, I said softly. Justice moves as it should. A furious shout came from Jessica. You can't do this. This is insane. Yes, I can, I said. And I just did. She screamed, then hung up, leaving only silence in her wake. 2 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Mr. Thompson. It's done, he said. The house is restored. The accounts are frozen. The powers of attorney are revoked. Daniel and Jessica have no recourse. They must vacate in 48 hours. I felt the tension in my chest loosen slightly, but there was no celebration. I had reclaimed my home, yet the weight of having to confront my own son in this way lingered. I returned to the hotel, sat on the bed, and stared at the ceiling, letting the enormity of the day sink in. Later, I called Solange, a manager I had met at a supplier fair the previous year. Solange, I need a new manager, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos. She agreed to meet that afternoon, even amidst the turmoil. Life continued. Business had to go on, employees needed guidance, and my spirit demanded action, not despair. 2 days later, at 9 a.m., I rang the doorbell of my own house. The door opened to Daniel's face, eyes sunken, lips pale, guilt and anger warring within him. What are you doing here? He asked, voice trembling. I came to check that the move-out is proceeding, I said calmly. It's the deadline today. He gave a strained laugh, attempting bravado, but his eyes betrayed him. Jessica sat on the couch, scrolling on her phone, but she jumped up when she saw me. You destroyed us, she accused, her finger pointed like a dagger. This isn't destruction, I said evenly. This is protection. Protection of what is rightfully mine. We have nowhere to go, she shouted. We don't have money for rent. You should have thought of that before you evicted your mother, I replied calmly. You're selfish, she cried. I always knew you were selfish. I shook my head. No, Jessica. You exploited my kindness, manipulated my son, tried to steal my life's work. That is selfishness. I am defending what is mine. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She knew I was right. Daniel stepped forward, exhausted. Enough, Mom. We will leave. You need to know you've lost your family, your children, your privileges, I said quietly, looking into his eyes. He hung his head. I saw regret there, shame, but also fear. This was your choice, Daniel, not mine, I said. I only protected myself. Daniel said nothing, and I turned away. Passing the children's room, Emily ran to me, wrapping her small arms around my legs. Grandma, you came back, she cried. I hugged her tightly, smelling the familiar strawberry shampoo she always wore. Noah came closer, concern in his young eyes. Grandma, is it true we have to move out? Yes, honey, I said gently. But sometimes life changes, and people must adjust. You will be safe, and I will see you often. They nodded solemnly, too young to fully understand, but comforted by my presence. I returned to the hotel, knowing that in just a few hours, the house would be empty. At 5 p.m., Mr. Thompson called. They're gone, he said. Keys handed over, house cleared. Where did they go? I asked, probably to Jessica's parents, or friends. I'm not certain, he replied. I exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain. My home was mine again, but there was no triumph, no joy. Only quiet resolve. I had reclaimed my home and my dignity, but the wound of betrayal still lingered. I ordered food to my room, ate mechanically, and sat in silence, reflecting on the past 48 hours. I had acted decisively, protected my company, my assets, and my grandchildren, and yet, I knew that rebuilding trust with Daniel would be the real challenge. 2 weeks later, I learned that Jessica had left Daniel, filing for divorce without a fight. He had taken a job at a warehouse, far below the salary he earned at Celebrate Life, and they rented a modest apartment. Daniel had begun to feel the consequences of his choices, and slowly, humility replaced the arrogance he had displayed that Christmas Eve. I watched from a distance, quietly, as the first steps of accountability and reflection began to take root. Solange, my new manager, had arrived and was reviewing every aspect of the company with sharp eyes. Within her first week, she uncovered evidence that Jessica had embezzled funds. From the company, small amounts over months, totaling $18,000. The realization sent chills down my spine. I called Mr. Thompson, showing him the bank statements and fabricated invoices. "This is asset misappropriation," he said, frowning. "You could press charges." I considered it, feeling a mix of satisfaction and restraint. I did not want to harm my grandchildren by seeing their mother arrested. Instead, I kept the evidence safely stored, knowing that justice had already been served in the form of restored home, frozen accounts, and revoked powers. Weeks passed, but the shadow of that Christmas Eve still lingered over me, even though I had my home and company back. I knew the hardest battles were not legal, they were personal. Daniel, my own son, was humbled. Working long hours in the warehouse, but the pride and entitlement that had clouded his judgment were slow to fade. I watched quietly, not to gloat, but to gauge the changes within him. He arrived early, tired from lifting boxes, yet he still tried to manage his shame with forced cheer. Solange walked beside me that morning, reviewing inventory and checking contracts. "Mrs. Margaret, the systems here are outdated," she said, her tone professional but gentle. "We need to modernize before any more losses occur." I nodded, feeling the stirrings of hope. I had spent decades building Celebrate Life, nurturing it like a child, and now, with a trustworthy manager and loyal employees, I could finally breathe again. One afternoon, Daniel approached me in the back office, hands fidgeting nervously. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked softly. "Yes," I replied, setting aside the documents I was reviewing. He took a deep breath. I understand now. I understand why you didn't want to hand the company over. I thought I wanted it for myself, but I didn't see the responsibility, the sacrifices you made." Tears filled my eyes, not from anger, but from relief. "Daniel, it's not about punishment," I said. "It's about understanding. You were misled, and you made mistakes. But it's never too late to learn from them." He looked down, voice shaking. "Jessica manipulated me, but I should have trusted you. I betrayed you, Mom. I hurt you, and I hurt the children too." I reached out and touched his hand. "Acknowledging it is the first step. Actions speak louder than words, Daniel. Prove to me and to them that you can be responsible, that you can be the son and father you're meant to be." Over the next weeks, I noticed subtle changes. He stopped lingering in the office during management meetings, refraining from asserting opinions that weren't his to give. He followed Solange's instructions without complaint and began to take pride in the work itself, not in the imagined authority he once craved. One evening, I was walking through the warehouse, checking shipments, when I saw Daniel lifting boxes with a strained back. I approached him quietly, placing my hand on his shoulder. "Do you need help?" I asked gently. He shook his head, breathing heavily. "I can manage. I need to understand the hard work you endured. This is how I'll learn." Pride and humility mingled on his young face, a glimpse of the boy I had raised before greed and manipulation clouded his heart. By the end of January, I had begun planning for the company's future. Solange and I mapped out marketing campaigns, improved supply chains, and reconnected with loyal clients who had grown concerned during the turmoil. The employees responded with renewed energy, grateful for the stability and leadership that had returned. In February, I received a quiet call from Daniel. "Mom, I'm sorry again," he said. "Jessica left, and I realize how much I took for granted." I closed my eyes, heart softening. "Daniel, you can't change the past. But you can shape the future. Focus on the children and your work. That's what matters now." He paused. "I want to start over, for them and for you. Will you allow it?" I nodded. "One step at a time, Daniel. One step at a time." Soon, I began to see progress. Daniel started taking an interest in the children's education, helping with homework and attending school events. Emily brought home a painting she had made, and he praised her sincerely, with pride and warmth, not the forced compliments he used to give. Noah started swimming lessons, and Daniel attended every session, cheering, encouraging, and supporting in a way that was both new and genuine. The relationship, though fragile, was mending. March arrived, and with it, the first real sign of transformation in Daniel. I promoted him to sales, giving him a tangible responsibility that required skill, honesty, and diligence. He struggled at first, fumbling orders and calculations, but he persisted. Solange guided him, corrected errors, and I watched as the humility and determination I had hoped for began to root themselves firmly in his character. By April, he was a sales supervisor, earning trust not because he was my son, but because he earned it. His pride had shifted from entitlement to accomplishment, and I felt a cautious sense of relief. The company thrived, with sales increasing by nearly 40%. Solange's strategies, modern and visionary, were paying off, and I, still at the helm, felt lighter, no longer burdened by fear of betrayal or financial sabotage. One morning in May, Daniel came to me, hesitating at the office doorway. "Mom, can I speak freely?" he asked. "Of course," I said. "I've realized so much," he said, voice wavering. "I thought I understood your strength, but I didn't. I thought you were selfish for keeping control, but now I see it was protection of your life's work, protection of the children, protection of me from my own foolishness." Tears streamed down his face, and I felt the ache of the Christmas Eve betrayal soften slightly. "Daniel, what matters is that you understand," I said. "Now show it through your actions, every day." He nodded, determination clear in his eyes. In June, I decided it was time to rewrite my will. I called my lawyer, making careful decisions to ensure the future security of my grandchildren and the charitable work I had dreamed of. 70% of my assets, the house, the store, and the savings, went to the Andrea Foundation for Widowed Women Entrepreneurs. The remaining 30% was held in trust for Emily and Noah until they turned 25, ensuring education and opportunity for their future. Daniel would receive only a small apartment I had purchased years before, worth approximately $180,000, enough to support him without granting undue privilege. He read the document silently, then returned it to me. "You did the right thing, Mom," he said. "It's fair. I am glad the children will have security, and that others will benefit from our work," I replied. August arrived, and with it, regular visits from the children. Every Saturday afternoon, Emily and Noah would spend hours with me, playing, laughing, and sharing the simple joys of childhood. Tyler, now 10, asked one day, "Grandma, why did you and Dad fight?" I sighed, looking into his young, curious eyes. "Sometimes people lose their way," I said softly. "They make bad choices, hurt those they love, but what matters is learning from it and trying again." "Are you and Dad trying again?" he asked. "Your father and I are doing our best," I said. He smiled, content with that simple answer, and returned to his toys. By September, nearly a year after that terrible Christmas night, Daniel had met someone new. Fiona, a school coordinator, was different from Jessica, honest, simple, and caring, not interested in wealth or manipulation. He was happy, and I cautiously allowed myself to believe that he had learned the lessons of humility, responsibility, and integrity. Dinner one week with Fiona and the children confirmed it. Fiona's warmth and respect reassured me that Daniel's heart had changed. I welcomed her into our lives, knowing that slowly, the fractures of the past could heal with patience and guidance. And as October arrived, nearly a year since my darkest Christmas Eve, Celebrate Life was stronger than ever. Revenue exceeded $100,000 each month. The house was peaceful, filled with laughter, photographs, and quiet contentment. Daniel worked honestly, living in a rented apartment with the children, gradually earning back the trust he had once shattered. Forgiveness was not complete, but the journey toward reconciliation had begun. I had reclaimed my home, my company, and my dignity, and slowly, the family I feared I had lost began to knit itself together again, stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The morning sun streamed through the windows of my office, casting a warm glow over the newly polished floors. I sipped my coffee, savoring the rare moment of calm before the day began. Solange was already reviewing contracts with a client over the phone, her tone sharp yet reassuring. I leaned back, reflecting on the months that had passed since that fateful Christmas Eve. The memories of being shoved out of my own home still stung, yet the lessons I had learned from that pain were invaluable. Daniel had changed, slowly but undeniably. He no longer barged into decisions or tried to assert authority where it wasn't his place. Instead, he focused on his work, showing diligence, humility, and a genuine desire to contribute. Still, there were moments when I could see the flicker of the old pride in his eyes, a reminder that trust must be rebuilt continuously. One afternoon, a call came from the accountant. "Mrs. Margaret, we've completed the quarterly review," the voice said. "Thank you." "What's the report?" I asked. There were some discrepancies in the accounts during the last 6 months, the accountant replied cautiously. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Discrepancies? What kind? Small amounts, but they add up to approximately $18,000, he explained. I froze. My mind raced back to Jessica, the manipulative woman who had almost destroyed everything I had built. I gritted my teeth, anger simmering beneath the surface. Do you have documentation? I asked. Yes, bank statements, invoices, and payment records, he replied. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I had learned that anger could be a useful tool if channeled wisely, but it should never cloud judgment. I called Solange into my office. Solange, please review these documents immediately, I said, handing her the files. Her eyes widened as she scanned the records. This is clear embezzlement, she said firmly. It's small amounts, but deliberate. Someone has been diverting funds over the past 6 months. I nodded slowly. I suspected it. We need to be cautious, but I don't want to harm the children or escalate unnecessarily. I just want this person held accountable, indirectly if necessary. Solange understood immediately, and together we devised a plan to secure the company's assets and prevent further theft. Meanwhile, Daniel had begun taking on more responsibilities, and I could see him growing into a capable and accountable adult. One evening, as I was leaving the office, Daniel approached me. Mom, can we talk? He asked nervously. Of course, I said. He took a deep breath. I want to apologize again for everything. For believing Jessica over you, for trying to take the company, for all the pain I caused. I studied his face, seeing the sincerity and regret etched in every line. Daniel, apologies are words, I said gently. Actions are what truly matter. Show me through your choices that you've learned from the past. He nodded, and I felt a flicker of hope. Over the next few weeks, the company stabilized. Solange implemented new financial safeguards, tightened inventory controls, and introduced modern management systems. Clients returned, reassured by the renewed stability and leadership. The employees, once fearful of instability, began to regain confidence, and productivity improved significantly. One morning, I walked into the warehouse to check on the inventory. Daniel was lifting boxes with a determined focus, sweat on his brow, muscles straining. I approached quietly. You're working hard, I said softly. He looked up, startled. I want to understand the effort, Mom. I need to respect what you built. I smiled faintly. Then you're on the right path. Remember, humility is as important as strength. He nodded, returning to his task, and I realized that trust and respect were being rebuilt, brick by brick. By late spring, I had begun planning for the future, both for the company and for my family. I arranged for workshops and mentoring sessions for my employees, emphasizing professionalism, ethics, and loyalty. I wanted to cultivate not just a successful company, but a culture of integrity and respect. Daniel was a part of these sessions, learning not just management skills, but also the importance of ethical leadership. One afternoon, while reviewing invoices, Solange approached me with a serious expression. Mrs. Margaret, I discovered something significant, she said. What is it? I asked, bracing myself. Jessica embezzled the funds deliberately. The invoices are falsified, and she transferred money to accounts under her control, Solange explained. My stomach tightened. I have all the records, she continued. We could press charges if you choose to. I paused, thinking of the children and the family dynamics. No, I said finally. She has lost everything already. Let this be a lesson, but I don't want to escalate and cause further harm to the kids. Solange nodded, understanding the balance I sought between justice and compassion. We stored the documents securely, like a backup card in a game of life, ready if needed, but not used for revenge. Daniel, meanwhile, continued his journey of redemption. He worked in the warehouse, lifting boxes, managing inventory, and following Solange's guidance. His face, once clouded with pride and entitlement, now showed humility and focus. By July, he had been promoted to sales supervisor, not because he was my son, but because he earned it through dedication and competence. I observed quietly, proud of his progress yet aware that true character is revealed in continued consistency. One afternoon, Emily and Noah came running into my office, excitement on their faces. Grandma, look! Emily exclaimed, holding a painting she had made at school. "Mom, you have to see this," Noah added, holding a small trophy he had won in swimming. I smiled, feeling the warmth and innocence of their achievements. Daniel watched quietly, admiration in his eyes, realizing the importance of supporting the children rather than clinging to material desire. By the end of summer, our family dynamics had shifted. Daniel had learned accountability, humility, and the value of hard work. The children were thriving, happy, and loved, with stability restored in their lives. I had secured my company, rebuilt trust, and strengthened the foundation for the future. I also began to focus on philanthropy, establishing initiatives through the Andrea Foundation for widowed women entrepreneurs. Helping women who faced the same hardships I had endured gave my life renewed purpose and meaning. By September, Daniel had met Fiona, a kind and honest woman who respected our family and cared genuinely for the children. Her presence brought calm and hope into Daniel's life, a stark contrast to the chaos that Jessica had introduced. We had dinner together one evening, and I saw in Fiona a sincerity that reassured me Daniel was on a healthy path. The children responded warmly to her, and I cautiously allowed myself to believe that trust and happiness could coexist again. October arrived, and nearly a year had passed since that darkest Christmas Eve. Celebrate Life was thriving beyond my expectations, bringing in over $100,000 each month. The house was peaceful, filled with laughter, photographs, and quiet comfort. Daniel worked diligently, living in a modest apartment with the children, steadily rebuilding the trust that had been broken. Though forgiveness was not complete, progress was undeniable, and hope had taken root once more in our lives. I had reclaimed my home, my company, and my dignity. And slowly, the family I feared lost was knitting itself together again. Stronger and wiser than before, the first chill of November crept into the city as I walked into my office, the crisp air reminding me that life moved relentlessly, whether we were ready or not. I glanced at the calendar. The anniversary of that Christmas Eve nightmare was approaching. The memory of being shoved out of my home still stirred a deep ache, but it also reminded me of the fire that had been ignited within me. Daniel had been working diligently, transforming from a son who once acted out of greed to a man who understood responsibility. Yet I knew trust had to be rebuilt every day. That morning, Solange approached me with her usual calm confidence. "Mrs. Margaret, I've completed the review of the new client contracts," she said. "Excellent. Anything unusual?" I asked, sipping my black coffee. She hesitated for a moment, then looked me straight in the eyes. "There's one contract that was altered recently, without your knowledge. The changes could have led to a significant financial loss, around $15,000, she explained. I felt my chest tighten, but I remained composed. "Who authorized it?" I asked quietly. "No one from the company. It seems like an external attempt to manipulate our agreement," she said. I nodded, processing the information. "Let's handle this carefully," I said. "We cannot let fear drive us, but we must protect everything we've built." I called Daniel into my office, aware that this was another opportunity for him to learn and grow. "Daniel, we have a situation," I said gently, placing the documents in front of him. He studied the papers, brow furrowed. "Someone tried to interfere with the contract?" he asked, disbelief in his voice. "Yes. And it would have cost the company $15,000, I said. He exhaled slowly, absorbing the gravity of the situation. "I understand, Mom. I'll help investigate, learn everything about it, and make sure it doesn't happen again," he promised. I smiled faintly. "That's all I ask, Daniel. Responsibility isn't just about following rules, it's about protecting what's important, understanding the consequences of every choice." As the day unfolded, I watched him navigate the investigation with focus and determination. For the first time in years, I felt a cautious pride swelling in my chest. By evening, we had traced the attempt back to a former associate of Jessica's, someone she had encouraged to exploit our company. The revelation only strengthened my resolve to protect the company and my family. That night, I walked through the now quiet streets, thinking about the twists of fate and the lessons of patience, vigilance, and resilience. I realized that the real victory was not in reclaiming my home or my company, but in rebuilding the foundation of trust and integrity around me. The next morning, I prepared for a board meeting, determined to reinforce the strength of our company culture. Employees gathered in the conference room, some nervous, others hopeful. "Today, we move forward with transparency, accountability, and trust," I began, my voice steady but warm. "We have faced challenges, betrayal, and mistakes, but we have also learned, adapted, and grown stronger. Solange nodded beside me, showing the team that leadership was a shared responsibility. Daniel, seated among the staff, looked different than he had a year ago. His posture was upright, his expression focused, his eyes free of the entitlement that had once clouded them. I continued, everyone here is part of something larger than themselves. Our mission is not only to succeed financially but to uphold integrity, respect, and excellence in every action we take. Applause filled the room, genuine and relieved, as the employees absorbed the message. Later that week, I received a call from one of my suppliers. Mrs. Margaret, I have news, the voice said. Yes? I asked cautiously. We found out that someone attempted to divert funds from our accounts through forged documents. He explained. I felt a mixture of anger and satisfaction. Thank you for informing me. I want all evidence preserved. This will not succeed, I said firmly. I realized then that vigilance was not a burden but a necessary armor for anyone who builds and protects what they love. That evening, Daniel joined me in the office. Mom, I've been thinking, he said. Yes, Daniel? I understand now why you never handed over the company. It's not just a business, it's your life's work, your struggle, your legacy. I see that, and I respect it. My chest tightened with emotion. I only want you to remember this, Daniel, I said softly. Respect, loyalty, and responsibility are not just words. They define who we are when no one is watching. He nodded solemnly. In the following days, Solange implemented stricter financial oversight, introducing systems that ensured no one could tamper with accounts or contracts unnoticed. Daniel immersed himself in the new processes, learning the intricate details of the business he had once sought to claim without effort. I watched quietly, realizing that his humility and diligence were slowly repairing the wounds of the past. 2 weeks later, an unexpected opportunity arrived. A local entrepreneur approached me with a proposal to expand our business into new markets. I studied the plan carefully, consulting Solange and Daniel. This could be the growth we've been aiming for, I said, considering both risk and reward. Daniel's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm, but I reminded him, opportunity is valuable, but only when approached responsibly and ethically. Never let ambition blind your judgment. He nodded, taking the lesson to heart. The expansion project began. With careful planning and strategic decisions, employees were trained, systems updated, and Solange supervised every detail. I watched as Daniel took on responsibilities he had never imagined before, proving himself capable and committed. Meanwhile, the children continued to flourish. Emily won another art competition. While Noah's swimming achievements brought pride and laughter to the house, I realized that these small victories, these moments of joy, were just as important as any financial or legal triumph. One evening, I received a message from Fiona, Daniel's new partner. She's different, Mom, Daniel had told me, and the message confirmed it. Fiona's warmth, honesty, and genuine care for the children brought stability and hope into our lives. I felt cautious optimism, realizing that trust and love could bloom again after betrayal and loss. By mid-November, the company had not only stabilized but grown, increasing revenue by over 40% compared to the previous year. Daniel's hard work, Solange's expertise, and my leadership combined to create a team stronger than I had ever imagined. One quiet evening, I sat in my office, reflecting on the journey from despair to hope. I realized that the true measure of resilience was not merely surviving hardships but learning, adapting, and rising stronger each time. The lessons of betrayal, humility, responsibility, and compassion had been carved into the foundation of our family and business. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the fire that had once threatened to destroy me, for it had forged strength, wisdom, and clarity. As I prepared to leave the office, Daniel approached me with a smile. Mom, I want to thank you, he said quietly. For what? I asked, curious. For not giving up on me, for teaching me the right way to live and work, for showing me the value of respect and patience, he said, eyes glistening. I reached out and held his hand, feeling the connection that had been nearly severed a year ago. You're learning, Daniel. Keep learning, and you'll become the man you're meant to be, I whispered. The night fell, and I walked home, reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. From betrayal to redemption, from despair to hope, our story was far from over, yet the path forward was illuminated with lessons learned and trust rebuilt. I knew challenges would come again, but I also knew we were stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. December arrived with a bitter wind that cut through the city streets. But inside my home, warmth lingered. The house no longer smelled of despair. It smelled of cleaning products, fresh paint, and cautious optimism. I had spent days walking through every room, arranging furniture, checking locks, and making sure that every corner reflected both safety and comfort. Daniel was busy in the office, learning how to manage new client accounts, taking on responsibilities he had never imagined before. I watched him, silently marveling at how far he had come from the selfish, entitled boy who had thrown me out only months ago. Emily and Noah were busy with school projects, their laughter echoing through the hallways, a sound I had once feared I would never hear again. Even Solange seemed invigorated by the renewed energy in the company, her eyes sharp, her smile warm, a beacon of reliability and skill. That morning, I received a letter that made my heart skip a beat. It was from a legal consultant, confirming that Jessica's attempt at financial sabotage had been fully documented. I read each line carefully, ensuring that every irregularity, every forged invoice, and every unauthorized transaction was recorded. A sense of satisfaction washed over me, not vindictive satisfaction, but the deep comfort of knowing that justice, even if delayed, had been meticulously prepared. I called Daniel into my office. "Daniel, I want you to see this," I said, handing him the folder. He scanned the documents, his expression shifting from curiosity to disbelief, and then to a quiet acknowledgement of the truth. "Mom, I had no idea," he murmured, shame lining his voice. "You didn't need to, Daniel. But now you know why I've been cautious all these years," I said gently. He nodded solemnly, a gesture heavier than words could capture. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and planning sessions. Solange and I devised stricter protocols for every department, ensuring that no single person could manipulate finances or contracts. Daniel took on the role of internal auditor, his new responsibility teaching him humility, diligence, and vigilance. I noticed small changes in him. Gestures of respect, moments of consideration that had been absent in the past. Even simple things, like holding the door for employees or listening without interrupting, became habits. One afternoon, as the sun filtered softly through the office windows, I received a phone call from a former client. "Mrs. Margaret, I wanted to apologize," the voice said. "For what?" I asked, puzzled. "For doubting your management, for believing rumors that weren't true," he said, a hint of shame in his tone. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. "Thank you for calling," I said. "It takes courage to admit mistakes. Let's focus on moving forward." After the call, I sat quietly, reflecting on the fragility of trust and how easily it could be shattered, yet how resilient it could become with patience and integrity. That evening, Daniel and I shared a quiet dinner in the kitchen. He looked different than he had a year ago. His shoulders were no longer slumped under guilt, but squared with responsibility. "Mom, can I ask you something?" he said, breaking the silence. "Of course, Daniel." "Do you ever regret teaching me lessons the hard way?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I smiled softly, a touch of melancholy in the curve of my lips. "No, Daniel. I regret nothing. Every mistake, every challenge, every tear, led to growth. You are learning responsibility, compassion, and accountability. Those lessons are invaluable," I said. He nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of my words. Over the next few weeks, the company thrived under the combined efforts of Solange, Daniel, and myself. We secured new contracts, strengthened client relationships, and restored employee morale. But it wasn't just the business that was healing. Family dynamics were shifting, slowly, quietly. Emily and Noah spent more time with Daniel, learning that he was no longer the man who had made selfish decisions. They laughed, teased, and argued like siblings should, filling the house with a sense of normalcy I had feared lost forever. One night, as I was closing the office for the day, Daniel approached me with a hesitant expression. "Mom, I've been thinking about something," he said. "Yes, Daniel? I want to make amends with the past, but I don't know how," he admitted. I took a deep breath, understanding the complexity of forgiveness. "You begin by acknowledging your mistakes, taking responsibility, and proving through actions that you've changed," I said. He looked at me, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'll do it, Mom. I promise," he said, his voice trembling with sincerity. The following week, I noticed subtle shifts in Daniel's behavior. He approached tasks with careful consideration, sought guidance when needed, and offered help to employees without expecting recognition. Even in small interactions, respect and humility were evident. Solange commented once, "Mrs. Margaret, Daniel is transforming. He's learning more in these weeks than I ever imagined. I nodded quietly, feeling a mixture of pride and cautious hope. Meanwhile, preparations for the holiday season continued at the company. Inventory had to be updated, seasonal promotions organized, and staff schedules finalized. Despite the chaos, there was a sense of excitement, a feeling that we were moving forward together. One afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Solange, carrying a stack of files and a determined expression. "Mrs. Margaret, I've discovered something important," she said. She laid out the documents before me, detailing irregularities in vendor invoices and subtle attempts at misdirection. I scanned the papers, recognizing the meticulous effort required to uncover these attempts. "Good work, Solange. This level of diligence ensures that no one can manipulate us again," I said, appreciating her sharpness and commitment. Daniel, observing quietly, seemed to absorb every detail, understanding the gravity of oversight and accountability. That night, as I sat alone in my study, I reflected on how far we had come, from betrayal and heartbreak to vigilance and cautious optimism. The journey had been harrowing but transformative. I realized that true strength was not in wealth or power, but in resilience, integrity, and the willingness to rebuild when the world had tried to break you. The next morning, the office was alive with activity. Employees moved with purpose, meetings were held efficiently, and client calls were handled with professionalism. I noticed Daniel, now confidently navigating his responsibilities, offering guidance and learning simultaneously. For the first time in months, I felt a profound sense of peace, not the fleeting relief of victory, but the enduring calm of having weathered storms and emerged stronger. Later that week, I invited Daniel and the children to a small dinner at home. The table was simple but warm, filled with laughter, conversation, and a sense of belonging. Emily proudly showed me her latest artwork, while Noah recounted his swimming achievements. Daniel shared stories from the office, careful to highlight the contributions of his team rather than claiming credit. As I listened, I realized that the foundation of trust and respect was finally taking root. In that moment, I understood that the lessons of betrayal, accountability, and forgiveness were not abstract concepts but living, breathing truths shaping our daily lives. By the end of the week, the company had stabilized financially and emotionally. I walked through the office, observing employees focused on their work, a sense of pride swelling within me. Solange approached me quietly. "Mrs. Margaret, the systems you've implemented, combined with Daniel's efforts, have created a level of protection and stability we never had before." I smiled, feeling the culmination of months of effort and struggle. "Yes, Solange. And this is only the beginning. Strength isn't maintained by fear or control, it's nurtured through diligence, trust, and shared responsibility." That night, as I prepared for bed, I reflected on the past year. The betrayals, the heartbreak, the moments of despair, they had all led to this place of cautious optimism. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but the family and company I had rebuilt were now resilient, guided by lessons hard learned and wisdom hard earned. As I closed my eyes, I whispered a silent vow, to continue protecting what mattered, to nurture trust, and to ensure that the sacrifices of the past would bear fruit in the future. Because even in the face of betrayal, loss, and heartbreak, there is always the possibility to rise, to rebuild, and to create something stronger than before. January arrived, bringing a sharp chill, but inside celebrated, warmth and determination pulsed stronger than ever. I walked through the store, watching employees organize inventory and assist customers, a quiet pride settling in my chest. Daniel was overseeing a shipment, sleeves rolled up, focused, and precise, a stark contrast to the man who had once thrown me out. Solange approached with a folder in hand, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "Mrs. Margaret, I've identified an opportunity for expansion," she said. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Expand how?" I asked. "There's a market for premium event packages targeting corporate clients," she explained. "If we act quickly, we could increase revenue by at least 40% within 6 months." I smiled, feeling the thrill of strategy, the kind that had always made me love building a business. "Let's draft a plan," I said, my voice firm. "Time is of the essence." Daniel overheard and nodded, already calculating logistics in his head. The next few days were a blur of planning sessions, negotiations, and late-night calls. I marveled at Daniel's transformation. He listened, questioned, and contributed without arrogance, proving that growth often comes from humility. Meanwhile, Emily and Noah began asking more about their father's past mistakes. One evening, as we sat around the living room, Noah asked softly, "Grandma, why did Dad act the way he did?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes people let their desires cloud their judgment," I said gently. "Your father made mistakes, but he's learning from them. That's what matters now." Emily nodded thoughtfully, as though trying to reconcile her father's actions with the man he was becoming. Business meetings and family reconciliations intertwined, creating a rhythm I had never imagined possible. One afternoon, a courier delivered a package addressed to me. Inside was a framed letter from a client I had helped years ago, thanking me for my guidance and support. Tears pricked my eyes. It was a reminder that despite betrayal, hardship, and heartbreak, the positive impact we leave on others endures. The next week, Solange and I visited potential corporate clients, presenting event packages with professionalism and flair. Daniel followed quietly, absorbing every detail, asking insightful questions without trying to impress anyone. At the end of each meeting, I noticed a shift in the room's energy, a respect for our competence, our integrity, and our resilience. Back at the office, I called Daniel into my private study. "Daniel, I want to discuss a new role for you," I said. Watching his face carefully, he looked nervous, anticipating another rebuke, but I smiled reassuringly. "I want you to oversee operations for our new corporate division," I said. His eyes widened, a mix of pride and apprehension. "It will be challenging," I continued. "Mistakes will be costly, but I believe you're ready. Your growth these past months has shown me you can handle responsibility." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I won't let you down, Mom," he said, voice firm with determination. "I know you won't," I replied, feeling a rare warmth in my chest. The following days were consumed with preparations for the corporate launch. Employees worked tirelessly, following Solange's guidance and Daniel's oversight, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude for this team I could trust. One evening, after a long day, Daniel and I sat in my office, reviewing financial projections. "Mom, I need to ask something," he said hesitantly. "Go ahead," I replied. "Will you ever forgive me completely?" His voice trembled. Searching mind. I paused, considering. "Forgiveness isn't instant, Daniel. It's a journey. You've taken the first steps, and that means everything. Time will help heal the rest," I said softly. He exhaled, relief mingled with determination in his gaze. "Thank you, Mom. I'll keep earning your trust every day," he promised. As the corporate division launched, we faced challenges, tight deadlines, demanding clients, and unexpected logistical issues, but each obstacle strengthened our resolve. Daniel adapted quickly, learning from each mistake and listening intently to Solange's counsel. I observed quietly, marveling at the growth of my son and the stability Solange had brought to the company. Meanwhile, at home, Emily and Noah's questions about their father's past became more frequent. One evening, Emily asked, "Grandma, do you think Dad will ever make the same mistake again?" I took her hand gently. "Everyone makes mistakes, sweetheart. What matters is recognizing them, learning, and changing. Your father is learning, and that's why he's different now." Noah, curious as ever, asked, "But what about Jessica? Is she still in our lives?" I shook my head slowly. "No, honey. Some people enter our lives to teach lessons, not to stay forever. Jessica's chapter is closed, but we learn from it and move forward." Daniel overheard our conversation and nodded quietly, a silent promise in his eyes to never repeat the past. The corporate launch was a resounding success. Clients praised our professionalism, the seamless execution of events, and the attention to detail that had become the hallmark of Celebrate It. Revenue increased steadily, and employee morale soared. I received letters from clients expressing gratitude, some sharing that our events had brought joy to families, corporations, and communities alike. One evening, after returning home, I found Daniel sitting at the kitchen table, reviewing documents with meticulous care. He looked up, eyes tired but determined. "Mom, I've been thinking about succession planning," he said. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his foresight. "I want to ensure the company remains strong, even if something unexpected happens. I'd like to work with you on long-term strategies," he continued. I felt a surge of pride. "Daniel, that's exactly the kind of thinking that will secure Celebrate Its future. Let's work together," I said, smiling warmly. We spent hours discussing plans, reviewing projections, and brainstorming ideas, and for the first time, I felt a deep sense of partnership with my son. It was not the relationship we had once had, but it was better, built on accountability, trust, and mutual respect. The following week, I received a call from an old friend, inviting me to speak at a women's entrepreneurial conference. I hesitated briefly, remembering the hardships and betrayals I had faced, but then agreed. Sharing my journey, my mistakes, and my victories seemed like the right way to give back, to inspire others facing similar challenges. Daniel encouraged me, saying, "Mom, your story can help so many people. It's time they hear it." I smiled, feeling both fear and excitement as I prepared my speech. On the day of the conference, I stood on stage, looking at hundreds of attentive faces. I shared the story of betrayal, resilience, and rebuilding, not as a tale of revenge, but as a testament to perseverance and integrity. Tears filled my eyes as I spoke about the nights spent alone, the fear of losing everything, and the lessons learned from those experiences. The audience responded with empathy, applause, and gratitude. Many approached me afterward, sharing their own stories, seeking advice, and expressing that my journey had given them hope. Returning home that evening, I felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. It wasn't about wealth, power, or recognition. It was about making a difference, protecting what mattered, and teaching the next generation the value of resilience, honesty, and courage. Daniel and I sat together later, reflecting on the past months. "I never imagined we could come this far," he said quietly. "Neither did I replied, taking his hand. "But we did. And we'll keep moving forward, stronger than ever." That night, as I went to bed, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and contentment. The battles of the past had shaped us, but they no longer defined us. We were no longer victims of circumstance or manipulation. We were architects of our own future, and as I drifted to sleep, I whispered a silent vow to continue guiding, protecting, and nurturing, no matter the challenges ahead, because life would always test us, but with strength, resilience, and love, we could withstand any storm. February arrived, with the bitter chill of winter still lingering, but inside celebrate it, the energy was unstoppable. I walked through the office, pausing to watch Daniel carefully review contracts with Solange, their focus intense and precise. He no longer resembled the man who had thrown me out that Christmas Eve. Humility and determination had replaced arrogance and impatience. The phone rang, and I answered. "Celebrate it. This is Margaret speaking." It was a longtime client seeking a last-minute event package for a major corporate gala. I smiled, recalling how far we had come since that night of betrayal. "Of course, we can accommodate," I said confidently. "Let me connect you with our operations team." I handed the call to Daniel, who coordinated with efficiency I would have envied in younger years. After hanging up, I sat at my desk, staring at the framed photo of my grandchildren, Emily and Noah, that sat beside my computer. I could see in their innocent eyes the impact of the events that had unfolded. They had witnessed their father's mistakes and their mother's manipulation, and yet, they still trusted me, still sought guidance, and that responsibility weighed heavily on my heart. Solange knocked on the doorframe, holding a thick folder. "Mrs. Margaret, I reviewed last month's financials, and there's an irregularity," she said, her eyes serious. I felt a twinge of anxiety. "What kind of irregularity?" I asked, bracing myself. "Small embezzlements. Someone was diverting funds, but I traced it," she said, handing me the folder. My stomach sank as I recognized the name of the culprit, Jessica. "She's taken $18,000 over the past 6 months, Solange continued. "Bank statements, falsified invoices, it's all here." I held back a surge of anger, remembering how she had tried to dismantle my life. "Do we have proof enough to press charges?" I asked quietly. "Yes," Solange replied. "Everything is documented. Legally, we could pursue her." I shook my head slowly, thinking of my grandchildren. No one wins when a mother is punished and her children suffer. "No," I said firmly. "She's already lost everything. Let's just keep this as a record, a safeguard. I want nothing more from her." Daniel looked over my shoulder, understanding in his eyes. "You're sure?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm sure. Justice doesn't always have to be public. Sometimes, surviving and protecting what's ours is enough." The days that followed were a delicate balance of rebuilding the company and reinforcing family ties. Daniel took his role seriously, learning from Solange and embracing responsibility without entitlement. I watched him in awe, remembering the boy who had once believed taking the company from me was his right. He worked alongside employees in the warehouse, lifting boxes, checking inventory, and following procedures meticulously. I could see the weight of shame in his eyes, but also a new spark of humility and purpose. One Saturday afternoon, Emily and Noah arrived for their usual visit. Emily ran into my arms, exclaiming, "Grandma, look. I got an A on my math test." I hugged her tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of strawberry shampoo. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, my heart swelling. Noah, more reserved, walked in holding a drawing. "Grandma, I made this for you," he said, shyly. I took the crayon picture from him, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. "You're both amazing," I whispered. "Always remember, your worth isn't measured by money or power, but by your heart and integrity." Daniel watched from the doorway, a soft expression on his face. "Mom," he said quietly, "thank you for giving me a second chance." I nodded, feeling the weight of the past months lift slightly. "I'm proud of you," I said simply. A week later, I received a call from an old business associate, inviting me to a conference for female entrepreneurs. I hesitated, recalling the hardships, the betrayal, and the nights spent alone, but agreed to speak. Sharing my journey of resilience, courage, and survival felt like a responsibility, a way to empower others facing similar struggles. Daniel encouraged me. "Your story can inspire thousands, Mom," he said. "Don't hold back." I prepared my speech meticulously, choosing to focus not on revenge, but on survival and integrity. On the day of the conference, I stood on the stage, staring at hundreds of expectant faces. I shared my story, describing the cold Christmas Eve when my own son had thrown me out, the fear, humiliation, and despair that followed. Tears welled in my eyes as I recounted my nights in a cramped hotel room, the loneliness and hopelessness that threatened to consume me. But I also shared the triumphs, the strategic plan I executed with Mr. Walker, reclaiming my home, freezing accounts, and restoring order. To celebrate it, the audience responded with empathy and applause, many approaching afterward to share their own experiences and seek advice. I realized that despite everything, my journey had value beyond personal vengeance. It could teach resilience, perseverance, and the power of standing firm in one's convictions. Returning home, Daniel greeted me at the door with a warm smile. "How was it?" he asked. "Inspiring," I said. "And exhausting. But worth every moment." Over the next few weeks, we focused on long-term strategies for Celebrate It. Daniel and Solange collaborated closely, modernizing systems, expanding our corporate client base, and securing contracts that would sustain the business for years. I watched their partnership flourish and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Meanwhile, Emily and Noah grew closer to Daniel, seeing him as a father figure who was learning from his mistakes, rather than as the man who had once betrayed their grandmother. One afternoon, Daniel approached me with a hesitant expression. "Mom, may I ask something?" he said quietly. "Of course," I replied, curious. "I want to ensure that Celebrate It remains strong even when I take more responsibility. Can we discuss succession planning?" I felt pride mixed with relief. "Absolutely, Daniel. Planning for the future is essential. Let's do it together," I said. We spent hours discussing contingencies, reviewing projections, and creating a roadmap for the company's long-term success. I marveled at his maturity, the way he embraced accountability and strategic thinking. Life had given us a second chance, not just in business, but in family and trust. One evening, as snow fell gently outside, I received a call from an old friend. "Margaret, I heard about your journey," she said. "Would you consider speaking at a women's leadership conference?" I hesitated, then agreed. Sharing my story publicly felt right. It was no longer about revenge, control, or money. It was about resilience, the lessons learned from betrayal, and the hope that others could overcome their own challenges. Daniel encouraged me again. "Your experience can change lives," he said. I prepared diligently, determined to convey the strength found in facing adversity. On at the conference, I recounted the betrayal, the hardships, and the nights of doubt, but I also shared how planning, determination, and courage restored my life. Audience members approached afterward, many with tears in their eyes, sharing stories of personal struggles and seeking guidance. I realized then that my journey, painful as it had been, held the power to inspire, heal, and motivate others. Returning home, Daniel and I sat in the living room, reflecting on the past months. I never imagined we could come this far, He admitted, neither did I said, smiling. But here we are, stronger than ever. And we'll continue to grow, together. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt exhaustion mixed with quiet satisfaction. The battles of the past had shaped us, but they no longer defined us. We were survivors, architects of our own future, and guardians of what truly mattered. And as I drifted to sleep, I whispered a vow, to continue protecting, guiding, and nurturing, no matter the challenges ahead, because life will always test us, but with resilience, integrity, and love, no obstacle is insurmountable. Spring arrived, and with it, new challenges and unexpected opportunities. Celebrate it was thriving, yet I could not ignore the undercurrent of tension that lingered in my personal life. Daniel had grown steadily, earning respect from employees and clients alike, yet the memory of that bitter Christmas Eve remained a shadow we both carried. One afternoon, I received a call from a client requesting a high-profile wedding event. The bride-to-be was insistent on having every detail perfect, and the budget was substantial, over $100,000. Autumn arrived, bringing crisp air and golden leaves that danced along the sidewalks. Celebrated had grown stronger than ever. Clients returned, employees were motivated, and the reputation of our company had been restored beyond my highest expectations. Daniel had been promoted to operations manager, not as my son, but because he earned it through effort, diligence, and humility every day. I observed him learning, correcting mistakes, and becoming a man I could trust, not blindly, but through his actions. Ethan, though still cautious in his steps, had started to understand what it meant to be responsible. He spent more time with Emily and Noah, helping with homework, attending swimming lessons, and simply being present. I noticed the difference in the children. They were happier, less anxious, and more secure knowing they had both parents, guided by the unwavering presence of their grandmother. One morning, I received a letter in the mail. It was from a woman I had met years ago at a business seminar. Her name was Rosalind, and she ran a foundation supporting widowed women seeking to start small businesses. Margaret, the letter began, I have followed your journey. Your courage, your integrity, and your strength are extraordinary. I would like to collaborate with you to create a scholarship for women like you once were, resilient, determined, and brave. I smiled, feeling the weight of years of struggle, betrayal, and victories all converging into purpose. This was the moment I had worked toward all along, not just to protect my home or company, but to create something meaningful that would last beyond me. I called Rosalind immediately, and within a week, we were meeting to discuss the Andrea Foundation for Women Entrepreneurs. The goal was simple: provide mentorship, funding, and guidance for widows and women starting from nothing, giving them the tools to rebuild their lives. As I walked into the office that morning, Daniel greeted me with a folder in hand. Mom, I reviewed the new contracts for the foundation. Everything looks solid, he said, eyes bright with determination. I placed my hand on his shoulder. You've come far, Daniel. I am proud of the man you're becoming, I said softly. He nodded, clearly moved, but a hint of humility kept him grounded. That afternoon, Ethan visited the office. He had been quiet lately, reflecting, perhaps trying to understand the consequences of his previous actions. Mom, he said cautiously, I want to help with the foundation. I know I made terrible mistakes, but I want to make something right. I studied him carefully. Ethan, your redemption begins with action, not words. If you can contribute meaningfully without seeking praise, then you may find your place here, I said. He nodded solemnly, a sense of purpose settling in his expression. Over the next months, Celebrate It continued to thrive. Solange's management brilliance brought in high-profile clients, including corporate events, large weddings, and charity galas. Our revenue increased by 40%, and the office atmosphere was filled with energy, innovation, and respect. Every employee felt valued, and the company became not just a business, but a family in its own right. At home, the children flourished. Emily received recognition for her art, and Noah excelled in math and swimming. I watched them play in the garden, their laughter echoing through the house, and I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. One evening, as I prepared dinner, Daniel approached, holding a small envelope. Mom, this arrived for you today, he said. I opened it to find a letter from a client, praising not only the professionalism of Celebrate It, but also the heart and care that went into every event. Your integrity and attention to detail set a standard that inspires others. The letter read, I felt tears prick at my eyes. Years of struggle, betrayal, and relentless work had led to this recognition, not just of success, but of character. It reminded me of the lesson I had learned painfully. True success is never only financial. It is built on respect, resilience, and the ability to rise above betrayal. Later that week, I held a small gathering at my home for close family and friends. We celebrated milestones, small victories, and the Foundation's first scholarship recipients. Ethan and Daniel both spoke, acknowledging mistakes and pledging commitment to integrity. Emily and Noah presented handmade cards for the scholarship recipients. Innocent yet full of meaning. I realized in that moment that forgiveness and love are not synonymous with forgetting. They are choices that shape the future, providing lessons while protecting the soul from bitterness. That evening, I sat quietly on the porch, sipping tea and reflecting on the journey from being thrown out on Christmas Eve, to reclaiming my home, rebuilding my company, and restoring fractured relationships. The path had been treacherous but transformative. I took out my phone and recorded a message to share with those who might one day face similar struggles. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you love, remember this: strength is not in never falling, but in rising every time you do. Protect what matters. Set boundaries. Forgive, but do not forget the lessons learned. And most importantly, live with integrity, so that your life can become a lighthouse for others in darkness. I paused, thinking of all the viewers who might find courage in my story. Your past does not define your future. Your choices today shape your tomorrow. And even in the midst of despair, there is hope. I smiled, feeling the weight of years lift slightly from my shoulders. Daniel came out to join me, and we watched the sunset together, silent but united in understanding and mutual respect. In the following weeks, Celebrate It launched a series of workshops for young women entrepreneurs. The foundation provided grants, mentorship, and networking opportunities. Our small company had grown into a beacon of hope, proving that resilience, combined with action, could create change far beyond personal gain. One afternoon, Ethan approached me quietly. "Mom, I want to apologize again," he said. "Ethan, your actions speak louder than words. Continue to work with integrity, and that will be your apology," I replied. He nodded, understanding that trust is rebuilt over time, brick by brick, not through instant absolution. Life had given me a second chance, not just to reclaim my home and company, but to impact lives and leave a legacy of courage and empowerment. I realized that struggles, betrayal, and loss are not ends, they are catalysts for growth, reflection, and transformation. As the year drew to a close, I held a small gathering at the office to celebrate accomplishments and set intentions for the new year. Employees, friends, and family gathered, laughter and stories filling the room. I looked around and felt gratitude, not for wealth, not for power, but for the resilience, integrity, and love that had brought us here. Before the gathering ended, I addressed everyone. "Remember," I said, "challenges are inevitable. Betrayal and mistakes will happen. But your response defines you. Protect what matters, act with integrity, and never let bitterness take root. Life is too short for regret when courage can guide you forward." Applause echoed through the room, and I felt a deep sense of purpose. I turned to the camera, knowing that one story shared at the right time could inspire countless others. If you've been through hardship, remember, you are stronger than you think. Use your struggles to build something greater than yourself. And if you want to hear more stories of resilience, courage, and rebuilding life after betrayal, subscribe to this channel. Join us, and let's grow stronger together. As the night ended, I walked home under the autumn stars, hand in hand with Daniel, and felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The house was warm, filled with memories, laughter, and hope for the future. I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we were ready to face them, not as victims of circumstance, but as architects of our destiny. Life had tested me relentlessly, but it had also taught me the greatest lesson of all: power lies not in vengeance, but in resilience, wisdom, and love. And as I closed the door behind me, I whispered quietly to myself, I survived. I rebuilt. And I will continue to rise, no matter what. The story may have begun with heartbreak, betrayal, and loss, but it ended with courage, justice, and renewal. I hope my journey inspires you to protect your life, your heart, and your values, because sometimes, the darkest nights lead to the brightest dawns. And remember, if you've ever felt lost, betrayed, or alone, you are not powerless. Your strength, choices, and resilience can rewrite your story. Subscribe, follow, and join this community of courage, where every story shared becomes a guide. lesson, and a beacon for someone in need.